All right, chat. Why don't we just jump right into this this some more news video? What do you say? It's long. I haven't seen it, so let's just jump right into it. Enjoy it, so I can wake up after my 420 festivities. You know, I need a moment to like charge my brain up, get caffeinated. You know what I'm saying? I didn't get caffeinated this morning. I think man, I have absolutely no tolerance with weed. Anytime I use cannabis, I'm just baby zero tolerance. It's great. Bernie would win with Nina as VP if he doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell with black voters. I mean, that's because you believe that black people would just vote for Nina because she's black. I think Kamala Harris showed that that's not something that you can 100% rely on. You have to look at it. You have to have an authentic relationship with those black voters. It has to be built up. You can't just pick someone and go, they're black, therefore everyone who's, it's going to help with black voters. I think that people are a little bit beyond just the surface representation as a reason to support someone. Need to have like a more compelling case than that. And I'm not saying that Nina doesn't, just that you can't say Nina equals huge black vote. That's just not, I don't think the evidence is really there yet.
All that's old is new again. All of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again. If you don't learn from the past, you are doomed to repeat it. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. We are going back to the future! There's no fate but what we make for ourselves! Miles Dyson! She's gonna blow him away!
Terminator 2 is a great movie.
What is this? A show? What is going on here? Did I put this backdrop up? What was I talking about, even? It's a long time ago.
Why isn't Cody on Twitch? Because it's a lot easier to be if you have a YouTube, you could just make produced videos, and you that's better. It's less work. It means less of your time is consumed in like production of the content, especially if you have like editors and writers and shit.
Happy 420, everybody! Toke up those fat bongs and light a left-handed cigarette because we are talking about.
We're dealing with a spike in violent crime.
Damn, you saying bitter? I'm just saying it's better to be a YouTuber. There's nothing bitter about that. I'm not as good at it. I like streaming. Streaming is my bag,
It's an increase in shootings and homicides, robberies, carjackings.
Grim new numbers on the weekend violence. In St. Louis, Missouri, 11 people were shot. 2 of them are dead.
So cities across the country are seeing a major spike in violent crime now. A scary scene.
By the way, I thought, wait a minute. America's an armed society. Why aren't all the good guys with the guns just why aren't people just too intimidated to do any crimes? Anybody could have a fucking gun in this country. So why aren't people intimidated?
This week in New York City, so to shootout in the middle of the street during broad daylight.
Also violent crime spiraling out of control in New York City. A nurse visiting Manhattan died over the weekend after a deranged homeless man slammed her to the ground in Times Square.
Crime! Scary stuff. Maybe you shouldn't have gotten high for it, actually. I mean, geez, does anybody see any deranged homeless men lurking around ready to pounce? Luckily, I've rigged a crossbow to my door so that anybody who tries to come in and violent crime me will be violent crimed themselves. You hear me, crime folk? You stay away!
Oh, Mr. Cody!
Okay, the crossbow might be for other things, too. Come on in, Warmbow! It's unlocked! Where'd he go? You all heard Warmbow, right? God, I am high. Okay. Here's some news. Violent crime is on the rise across America, and the right-wing media really, really wants you to know this and to be afraid. Be very afraid. And if you're not already, you will be. Just check out this segment from Fox News.
Here's the reality. We are shooting each other and killing each other at a fever pitch. Violent crime is a very big problem. April 2021, 48%, June 41, March 2019, 49. We're still at about half.
So
of
they're
the
doing
people.
polls. They're using polls to justify their position. So they flog the idea that violent crime is a big problem, and then they use polls to prove that their media campaign is working. I love the Pew Research data right there. That's Pew Research data.
See what happens when the numbers come through and the stories are told and it starts to resonate where you
The
live.
axis is like ridiculous.
Maybe
as
I'm
well.
just really high, but Fox got way different from the last time I checked. But maybe, Chris, I helped my governor brother cover up a sex scandal, and also I got special and rare COVID treatment because my brother was the governor. Cuomo has a point there. I mean, with a long, weird middle name like that, how couldn't you trust him? Maybe we should be extremely afraid that... hold on. We'll go back to that graph real quick. Okay, wait. How high did I get? Because it really seems like that graph doesn't at all depict the rate of violent crime, but rather shows the number of American adults that believe that violent crime is a big problem. A thing that is not actually reflective of violent crime rates and could, like, be biased and influenced by news segments meant to scare people about crime. But more importantly, hey! The x-axis on that graph is backwards. You realize that, don't you, CNN? I feel like it's your job to know that.
I didn't even notice. It's going backward in time. The right is October 2018. I didn't even notice that. Oh, my Lord. I guess I'm still
so
high.
So it's weird that I have to point that out to you. And so while it appears to illustrate a rise in concern over violent crime over time,
it doesn't.
What it actually shows is a fall in concern over violent crime over the time period displayed. And again, I'm just so high, but I'm almost certain that's not how time works because, you know, breaking news, time moves like a spider web made of strands of rivers. And then inside it blows up like a balloon, and then those rivers are also made of spider webs that flow into each other. Okay, I wrote that when I was high too. I'm sorry. Forward! Time moves forward. CNN lied is my point. Is there a time spider though? Is that like a thing I should be concerned? Next episode. Settle down, Cody. I guess if you are worried about how people's opinion of crime being a big problem is less than it is now, you can at least rest assured that law enforcement, massive corporations, the media, and politicians will make sure to do everything in their power to stop the crime that people are less worried about. Maybe they'll rent a Batman, or failing that, they'll at least continue to stoke those unfounded fears that people don't have as much.
When you look at those train tracks and that trash, you say this is not a third world country. But it is.
Now, the dangerous consequences of left-wing crime policies are on full display tonight as an Apple store in Santa Rosa, California, was ransacked on Wednesday.
Brazen crimes caught on camera show exactly why American cities are under siege. Check out what happened at a Walgreens in San Francisco. This is a man in broad daylight looting a store and just filling up a garbage bag. Then he just casually rides his bike out of the store and onto the street. Walgreens alone has closed 17.
I mean, honestly, this is just like such a small amount of money stolen. Like, even if you clear off a whole rack of retail shit at Walgreens, you know, what's the most you're talking about? A couple $1,000s at the most? Like, this is such a minor crime that to actually have it be on national TV is incredible. Billions are stolen every goddamn day. This is incredible.
Stores in the city just because of this rampant theft.
Train robberies and lawlessness on the streets! Well, ain't that a bag of nails? Do I need to break out my shooting iron to protect my crossbow that I use to protect my weed, which I use to protect my brain from being not high? In the case of the recent string of train robberies in Los Angeles, Union Pacific Railroad has claimed with little evidence that these robberies are being carried out by organized crime and has blamed the theft on the newly elected progressive district attorney George Gascon's soft on crime policies. That's right. No one's soft on crime like Gascon. As a result, they're calling for harsher penalties to serve as a strong deterrence against train robbers. Yet what Union Pacific neglected to emphasize is that recent supply chain challenges have caused train cars to sit idle for significant periods of time, making them particularly vulnerable to theft, and that the company recently laid off an undisclosed number of their security staff right before these...
Oh, wait a minute. So they fire a bunch of workers that apparently were there that were needed, and then they turn to the government to subsidize their business.
Thefts began. And yet politicians like Gavin Newsom, who are incapable of and or unwilling to withstand the political pressure from the ensuing media onslaught, respond by proposing increased police budgets to protect businesses like Union Pacific.
Somebody said, I've been assaulted by crazy homeless people more times than I can count on my hand. I'm still glad I didn't shoot them to death. Well, the solution to the homeless problem is not to have a bunch more cops. The countries that don't have homeless people are the countries that have free medical care, free mental health care, public housing, a robust public education system. That's the type of stuff that ends homelessness. When people are mentally disturbed, they get the treatment they need for no cost. They aren't forced to live on the streets in filth, wandering around being mentally disturbed because of the traumas they get for being on the street, exposed to the elements, and having psychiatric or other disorders totally untreated. Yeah, that's pretty fucking bad. The solution isn't hiring a bunch of guys to stand around in a fucking Dodge Charger.
Happens to be reporting record profits. So, like, I guess I'm not trying to victim blame this giant train company, I guess, but it seems like they decreased their security and left their shit on the tracks and people stole from them. If I left my prized collection of garden gnomes in the middle of the road, I can't exactly complain when some other gnome pervert steals them all. There are dozens of us out there. And so it's almost like the public is spending their tax dollars to subsidize the security costs for a private corporation in order to protect their profits. And now it is exactly that. And in the case of the great Walgreens shoplifting crisis of the 2020s, supposedly going on in San Francisco right now, Walgreens is blaming their store closures on rampant theft, and local law enforcement is blaming Prop 47, a law which charges petty theft under $950 with a misdemeanor as opposed to a felony. This is despite at least one study showing that the proposition is not responsible for an uptick in crime. Oh yeah, those store closures we were just talking about, like literally seconds ago. It turns out that there are probably a bunch of other reasons Walgreens decided to do that, like the fact that the city is oversaturated with pharmacies and that the corporation had already laid out a plan in 2019 to close a bunch of stores across the nation in order to save money. Because it's kind of hard to believe that rampant theft is the reason you are closing 5 stores when 2 of those stores only had 7 and 3 reported retail thefts in 2021. Yet this is somehow one of the things that prompted San Francisco Mayor London Breed, who was elected on a platform of police reform and had initially pushed back against the narrative promoted by Walgreens, to pivot towards a policy of being more aggressive with law enforcement.
You know, this has been a problem that has persisted in this city for some time now. And the fact is, things have gotten worse over time.
Fun thing about facts is that she's technically right that things have gotten worse over time, but only if you count over time as the few years during the pandemic and not the larger crime stats, which show that things have actually gotten better over time. And that the high violent and property crime San Francisco is experiencing right now is still lower than the crime rates between 2014 and 2019, which is a long way of saying that no, you could argue things aren't getting worse over time. Fun how, much like that CNN graph, the people telling us that crime is worse seem to be taking a lot of liberties with the actual statistics. They just love taking liberties. But if you live in New York City, don't worry. The NYPD seems to have gotten this shoplifting crisis under control. According to the official Twitter account of the New York City Police Department, officers recently arrested 12 individuals and recovered $1,800 of stolen property, which included toiletries and medicine and diapers.
That's it.
So,
like, look at how small the thefts are. Like, yeah, stealing $1,800 is, don't do that. You know, I'm not encouraging you to do that because it's against the law and we have to follow the laws on twitch.tv. But the idea, like, come on, man. And that's 12 people. So it's an average of like $150 per person. Oh my God, dude. Wow, a whole $150. Thank you, NYPD. We need to have 3 guys making 120 grand a year for that. Huge. Thank you, Gumshoe.
Way to go, you Cottonelle warriors, working hard to keep America safe from a baby pooping. Gee, I wonder how much money they spent to retrieve this $1,800 of stolen property. The fact that the media is more concerned about shoplifting as opposed to a society where people are so desperate that they need to steal f***ing medicine and diapers pretty much tells you all you need to know about whose side they are
exactly,
really on.
It's fucking
And the
stupid,
fact that the
man.
cops who are supposedly charged to protect and serve will think that this tweet was a great example of them performing their duty. Well, it shows you who they really are tasked with protecting and serving. It's not us. And it's not a coincidence that these unsubstantiated narratives that induce media frenzies over pretend rising crime are taking place in two cities that have recently elected officials that came into office challenging the status quo of our criminal, let's call it justice system. These narratives are shaped by large corporations, private property owners, and the ruling class, not to mention the powerful toilet paper bear lobby. And they are typically supported, reinforced, and sometimes devised by law enforcement themselves. All of this to overwhelm frightful politicians and cause them to relent to the political pressure exerted by this dominant alarmist storyline. And it's a little bit disingenuous for large retailers to manufacture a narrative that supports harsher penalties for petty theft when corporations like the aforementioned Walgreens simply get hit with fines after stealing millions of dollars from their employees. And that actually brings up an important question that I don't think people ask nearly enough. What exactly is crime? I'm not philosophizing because I'm super high right now. I mean, literally, what defines a crime? We should probably explore that question, perhaps in a segment called What is Crime or something. Damn, that's good, actually. We should do like a whole thing for it.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, bad boys.
Perfect! Better than all movies! Anyway, in a legal sense, very simply, crime is when you break the law.
Better than something I could make, honestly. That's like better than anything I could make.
It's when you engage in an action or omission that is punishable by the state. Except, despite that pretty straightforward definition, there are some things the public generally thinks of as a crime and some things that we don't. For instance, we tend to think of things like robbery or shoplifting or hacking into someone's dream to influence them to dissolve their father's company when we think of crime. But we don't often think about cases when an employer refuses to allow their workers to take meal breaks or fails to reimburse them for business expenses or doesn't pay them for overtime as a crime. But as a matter of fact and law, these are all examples of wage theft, a crime that far outweighs the scope of other forms of theft and yet is rarely prosecuted. Which is why we have a system where minor crimes like being accused of stealing a backpack or shoplifting can come with massive penalties that ruin people's lives. And yet companies like Walgreens and Amazon who steal millions from their employees just get hit with fines that they can easily absorb, which might be a factor in why US companies vastly outspend the rest of the world on legal services or spend billions of dollars a year lobbying Congress to implement policies that protect their profits. At least until they invent those, dream crimes, and then they'll just incept the president to love corporate theft or whatever. It's the same system that sentences one person to 6 years in prison over a voting error, and yet allows another person, I won't say who, to see zero consequences for trying to steal a presidential election and inciting a violent coup attempt. Because our law enforcement and criminal legal system was designed to protect the private property and specific interests of the rich and powerful and to control the activity of the working class and poor. But we'll circle back to that because we still gotta deal with this whole crime biz. And while in my San Francisco example, it does seem like their overall crime rate is down, in fairness, and balanced dumb or balanced sub, there has indeed been a rise in violent crime over the past 2 years. And thankfully, we know exactly what the cause is.
When you defund the police, people die.
That's right, folks. We defunded the police across America and the criminals went wild.
I don't think there is even one city in America where the police funding was decreased. I don't even think there's a single one. When people, I think maybe the growth in the increase may have been slowed in a couple places. Meaning last year they got 45 billion and this year they get 45.1 billion instead of the projected 45.5 billion. But there has not been a single defunding. Relevant article. Let me just grab this. Nobody defunded the police. A study. Despite right-wing outrage and backlash for the president, there is little evidence that cities are slashing police department budgets. An analysis of over 400 American municipal budgets found that police departments in America got more or less the same amount of money in 2021 than they did in the previous 3 years. The budget cuts that did pass in a handful of cities were modest compared to the size of the total budget. 49% of participants blame defunding police for rising crime rates in America. Completely fucking batshit. Completely fucking insane. 69% believed increasing police budgets would decrease crime a lot or some. The problem is that there was very little, if any, defunding of the police. Our analysis of over 400 American municipal budgets found the police departments in America got more or less the same amount of money that they did the previous 3 years. We acquired budgets from 2018 to 2022 from 419 American municipalities selected for prominent size, location, and diversity. We then extracted the amount of the city's general fund, the bulk of city funding, which was directed to the police department, and compared those amounts across locations and years. Our model found that the percentage of the general fund dedicated to law enforcement stayed consistent, around 29%, after accounting for city and state level trends. If police budgets shrank or grew, they did in proportion to the overall budget. In 2022, cities allocated about 3% less for police, but did so after the defund backlash was in full swing. Look at it. You can literally see it. And they got back to increasing. Like, look at this shit. Boop, 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 boop. It didn't go down. Police budgets did increase less in 2021 than in previous years. From 2020 to 2021, budgets grew an average of 1.8%, compared to 3.8% and 4.5%. In 2021 to 2022, average growth was 5%. So they literally just more than made up for it. And actually, police budgets still increased faster than general budgets did. Incredible. So as a proportion of spending, incredible, man.
It was like that movie, The Purge, but even worse. It was every day. It was like a forever purge.
But
Probably.
People
I don't
perceive
know.
what reality is so far apart. It's scary. I'm glad. Oh, I mean, whatever, man.
I've only seen Inception, except wait a minute. While a number of cities did reduce their spending on police, or at least claimed to, in the immediate aftermath of the summer of protests following the public lynching of George Floyd and so many others at the hands of police, a bunch of those cities are now reversing course and restoring that very funding to their police departments amidst increased political pressure due to the continued rise of violent crime in their cities. But the thing is, the rate of violent crime is rising across the nation regardless of local policies, and there is no evidence that efforts to defund the police are the cause of this increase. According to The Guardian, research has shown that cities that increased police budgets were just as likely to see a rise in murders as cities that reduced them. So, heck, and gee, and shit on me. If it wasn't defunding the police, then what was it? Was there, like, anything that happened in the last few years that we can point to? You know what? Let's take a quick break so I can ponder this for a minute. Cut to some ads or like a picture of a dog or whatever. I don't care which. No, wait, I do. Cut to the dog.
Defund the police is a horrible slogan for the movement. The point wasn't to not spend less, but to move funding to support services that would target the root of issues. Instead of police, you only respond to the symptoms, not the cause. First of all, police don't even respond to symptoms, so you're just batshit off base there. Also, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck if you think it was a bad slogan or not. I don't give a shit. It's not a political, it wasn't a slogan derived in a fucking laboratory or a slogan that was developed by politicians. It was people mad on the streets, seeing more and more black and brown men and women and children killed. And the reality is that they live in a police state. Did you not see the history of American law and neo-slavery, and that it's built to target and control black people and put them in prison and get them in the legal system so we can extract their labor? And it's been that way since the end of slavery, and prior and during slavery, the law was used to keep black people in chains. The fuck are you talking about, man? You're saying it was a bad slogan speaking to people that are suffering under the state and have been for their entire existence in America. It's like, what are you talking about, man? It's like saying Jews will not replace us is the slogan of the Republican Party because the guys in Charlottesville did it. And there's a hell of a lot more case for that because of who's close to whom in the Republican Party than that the idea that radical anti-defund the police activists have any import in the Democratic Party. It's fucking stupid.
Hey folks, it's Cody, America's party animal. As you all know,
the 8th birthday, do this.
Oh my fucking God.
Praise
went. Oh yeah. So crime is rising across America. Except the thing is, even though the media has often framed the last 2 years as a rise in crime, that's not entirely accurate. Crime overall has essentially continued its decades-long decline. What has actually been happening is a rise in violent crime, and more specifically, a rise in gun-related homicides. But don't worry, this video is not about gun control on account of that subject being deemed exhausting and gunny. But the fact is that the last 2 years have seen record gun sales, and gosh, I wonder why. Maybe everyone got scared when they learned about all those new mutants walking around, or the seemingly inevitable levy invasion. Oh wait, second gosh, I just remembered that other thing that has been going on over the past couple of years. Apparently, we had a global pandemic. All right, or something like that. It was kind of a big deal, actually, in case you forgot, which I apparently did. And it's still very
White
much...
liberals telling their allies that a slogan is bad optics based purely on the bad faith misrepresentation of our enemies is stupid and needs to stop because libs hate the left. They'd rather spend their time attacking the left than the right. They agree with the right on most shit. There's more of a difference between the liberals and leftists than there is between liberals and conservatives. They largely agree on almost everything. It's exactly how you treat, you optically treat some minority groups, or whether or not you think gay people should be able to be rich or not. That's the main difference between libs and conservatives. They don't believe in shit. They're scum.
Happening, in case you need to remember. Like, third gosh, do you recall the early days of the pandemic? You couldn't buy soap or toilet paper or stylish paper gowns, and it felt like we were on our way to a Mad Max style dystopia. So a lot of people bought guns for the very first time in their lives, and for some inexplicable reason, more guns tend to correlate with more gun-related crimes.
Doesn't the right have people whose whole job is to workshop how to phrase things to cause moral panics? Yeah, that's right. Is their job worthless? Of course it's not worthless. I mean, it's worthless. It's profitable for them. It's worthless for society.
Weird. Look it up and why that is. And there are plenty of sources that explain how the pandemic is the likely cause of rising rates of violent crime over the past 2 years. But probably the most compelling one starts with the word no and ends with the word shit. See footnote labeled duh. Freaking, of course, the stress, the strain, the fear, the loss, the isolation, the economic insecurity of the pandemic are the very conditions that lead to violence. Conditions that, by the way, are even more severe in our criminal legal system, but more on that later. Because not only did the pandemic lead to a historic rise in gun sales, but COVID disrupted the work of community-based violence prevention programs, both physically and economically. Programs that had shown success in reducing violent crime. So, that could be a factor. It could also be the fact that people have been cooped up with their domestic abusers. Or it could be that watching a never-ending stream of police murders and shootings has understandably caused many people to distrust law enforcement and take conflict resolution into their own hands. Or, it could also be the fact that the economic and health consequences of the pandemic have disproportionately fallen onto communities that were already suffering from violent crime due to the strains of concentrated poverty created and perpetuated by systemic racism and decades of racist policy. Communities that we once commonly referred to as the ghetto. And the fact is that white society is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it. White institutions maintain it. And white society condones it. And perhaps compounding that stress onto already vulnerable communities is there's a word. What's the word? What? No, the word is bad. Jesus, Title Monkey, drink a coffee or something. Also really bad that a lot of people died, 1 million people. And it's been fucking terrifying for many.
Is
and
Cody's tie ripped denim? No.
When people are scared, they tend to make bad decisions. That's why you should never look at car loans while in a haunted house. But the truth is that the causes associated with both the rise in crime and the reduction in crime is a hotly disputed issue and an imprecise science. We can make some educated guesses, but anyone pointing a firm finger probably is trying to sell you something, like a haunted car loan. For instance, we don't fully know why crime has fallen so much since the 1990s. Theories include a decline in alcohol consumption, reduced levels of lead and gasoline, legalized abortion preventing would-be criminals from being born, the economic boom of the 90s, and the theory that there are...
I don't think I was clear before. Anyone that doesn't understand what defund the police means and wants to try to argue against it because of how it sounds is a liberal to me. I mean, of course they're a liberal scum. But see, to liberals, they think that surrendering the argument and throwing their own activists under the bus and running toward the right is a good strategy, when in fact, all it does, and this is what it actually does, if Democratic politicians had the balls to go out there and say police funding has gone up tremendously and it's not over the past 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years and things are worse. If they had the balls to say shit like this, and actually make an argument in favor of their worldview, a social democratic worldview, which they don't share, then their voters would at least have the confidence going forward, and they would ignite a lot of people that feel nihilistic and pessimistic and cynical about politics, and maybe could bring them back into the fold, and they could actually have a conversation, right? But the Democrats are so far away from that. The moment they get even the tiniest amount of pushback, they fold and run to the right. And so their coalition gets divided. The more radical and disenfranchised section of their coalition gets depressed, falls away, gets cynical, doesn't care about politics anymore. And the right wing of their party starts spending its time attacking members of their own coalition, causing inter-coalition fights, hatreds, resentments. Meanwhile, everybody who's in the middle, every kind of undecided dipshit, sees this and goes, well, clearly the conservatives are right because the left is fighting amongst themselves over this slogan. And I'm seeing clips on my local news that makes me think the right is correct. And you fucking lose horribly. Nobody who's in the center Democratic Party is going to win votes against a Republican. If a voter believes that law and order is needed, they're not voting for dino centrist Dems. They're voting for the real McCoy. They're voting for the Republican. The only time the Democrat wins is when people are calculating that they don't need that kind of bullshit. So everything you're doing, especially harping on defund the police as if it's some sort of significant thing, which it isn't. Actually, it's not true and not happening. You are giving more ammunition to the right. You are, in effect, defeating yourself. It's a self-preserving strategy designed to get libs reelected. They don't get reelected in any fucking contested district with this kind of climate. What's a good response if crime has been falling for decades and police funding has been going up for decades? Police funding led to lower crime because someone threw that at me yesterday. Because other countries exist and they haven't increased funding for the police. And crime is going down in the entire developed world. So even in countries where they didn't increase funding for police, and law enforcement, and they have far less people in prison, the crime rate is going down. The United States of America has the most people in prison of any country in the world per capita, far outpacing even like China. Many countries in Europe have 20% of the people we do in prison, and their crime rates have also declined. And
are just fewer young people than there used to be, and most crimes are committed by young people. And maybe it's not would-be criminals from being know why crime has fallen so much since the 1990s. Theories include a decline in alcohol consumption, reduced levels of lead in gasoline, legalized abortion preventing would-be criminals from being born, the economic boom of the 90s, and the theory that there are just fewer young people than there used to be, and most crimes are committed by young people. And maybe it's none or all of those things. And then there is, of course, the argument that more police on the streets and harsher penalties are responsible for the decline in crime. But one issue with that assertion is that incarceration rates were rising for years before crime started going down, and crime was rising during periods of increasing police budgets. And the current consensus from criminologists is that these policies have had, at best, a small effect on the decline in crime over time. That isn't to say that some studies don't show that more police reduce crime. According to one pretty extensive study, every new cop on the street prevents between 0.06 and 0.1 homicides, meaning that you'd need like 10 to 17 new cops to prevent one murder per year. Their presence also technically reduces certain types of crime, like carjacking, because people don't tend to do those crimes literally in front of a cop. That study found that arrests for crimes like burglary don't go up, but arrests for other types of crime go up significantly when you add these extra officers, meaning that they aren't stopping crimes so much as preventing certain types of crime from being committed by just standing there. And by standing there, they end up increasing arrests for things like liquor violation and drug possession, also known as non-violent crimes that shouldn't ruin a person's life for committing. This would also cost millions annually just to prevent that one murder, and so generally doesn't seem all that effective. While it's anecdotal, just look at the fact that New York City added over 700 more cops to patrol their transit systems this year, mere months before a mass shooting attack occurred on the subway, to which, of course, the New York Times immediately framed as shooting in subway station heightens simmering fears about public safety before quietly changing it. And of fucking course again, while the NYPD counterterrorism unit was busy terrorizing homeless people, the shooter was caught by some guy named Zach. But my point is that no police presence matters if someone simply doesn't care about getting caught. So ultimately, this data doesn't really show a huge improvement when you add cops. In fact, the study itself goes on to note,
I couldn't agree
critically
more.
though, the average effects described above mask important variation in the quality of policing across cities. In cities with relatively large black populations, the returns to investments in police manpower are smaller and perhaps non-existent for black civilians. Likewise, larger police forces lead to a greater number of arrests for quality of life offenses, in particular for black civilians, without the reduction index crime arrests that we observe elsewhere. In other words, these policies of more policing or harsher sentences also come with an array of catastrophic consequences for society and have been enacted at the expense of other less tragic policies that could have been much more effective at making our communities safer. Because, and I don't want anyone to call me a fucking bitch for saying this, but there are some things that we do know about the conditions that influence the level of crime in our society. But much like other foreshadows and clues riddled throughout this mysterious episode, we will get back to that. Or will we? Yes, we will. For now, it's worth noting that while there has been a rise in violent crime, it is still well below its peak in the early 1990s, despite the fact that polls show 56% of the population believes it's higher. And crime overall is much lower today than it was back then. Now, I don't want to minimize the impact that crime, and particularly violent crime, can have on individuals, their families, and communities. It can be devastating. But the fact is that our political and policy response to crime can be even worse. Something more scary than crime itself is the impact of the fear of crime. Because when media narratives about crime take hold, American history has shown us that it activates a certain kind of fight or flight mode in the political body. Politicians oscillate.
Yeah, it creates this like fear. I mean, God, this is so fucking annoying, man. I mean, everyone knew, oh, Joe Biden has changed. It's changed. He's changed. He's not the mass incarcerator anymore. The moment a crack of light opens up, Joe Biden be the far right, law and order, incarceration fest maniac he always was, he immediately pivots toward it. It was the most obvious shit in the fucking world, man.
Between leaning into these narratives and aggressively exploiting them for political gain, or reluctantly relenting to them due to public pressure and for, well, political gain. But either way, the result has mostly been the same. We, the titillating people of these United States, are presented with an extremely limited range of options when it comes to the policies created to address concerns over public safety. Typically, the options are to keep things the way they are, or hire more police, give them more power, and allow our system to inflict harsher penalties for criminal offenders. And if you don't want either of those options, well, then we'll just abandon you altogether, how about? You don't want our help? Fine. We'll see how well you do then, huh? Good luck in your John Carpenter hellscape of tsunami surfing. And speaking of arguably regretful things from the 90s, let's take a quick trip back in time. But first, deepest apologies for the Carpenter slander. Okay, time travel go now! The year is 1993. America has its first black president. All the cool kids have pagers and Jenkos and are pretending that they understand how to play the game Myst. Go a shit, you submarine maze!
I don't know. I beat Myst. Did you guys beat Myst? I beat Myst. Wasn't hard. I beat fucking Myst.
And the movie Groundhog Day, a story about a guy who is doomed to repeat the same tragic fate until he finally learns his lesson, has become a hit. And a man from Delaware stands on the Senate floor and flaps his gums.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must.
He's actually just the dumbest fucking meathead moron I've ever seen. I mean, just think about what he's saying. I don't care why he's attacking me. I just want to get him. And it's like, yes, in the immediate moment when somebody is attacking us, we need to handle them. But in the future, if we want to have less of those guys, we should probably figure out where they're coming from. If you want less people hit on the head with the lead pipe, Joe, you need to stop the lead pipe hitting your mom on the head guy from being created in the first place. You fucking idiot. Even in the face of his own arguments, it's manifestly stupid.
Be taken off the street.
This is, of course, our current president, Joe Bobby, pushing for the passage of the infamous and controversial crime bill, a piece of legislation that he largely wrote himself, with a little help from the police, of course, that ultimately passed into law in 1994. While the bill did include some arguably good things like the Violence Against Women Act and an assault weapons ban, the law also did some, let's say, opposite of good things, whatever that word is. Joe himself unabashedly bragged about it in the aftermath of the law's passing as proof that the left wasn't soft on crime, saying this at the time.
Well, let me define the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. The liberal wing of the Democratic Party is now for 60 new death penalties. That's what's in this bill. The liberal wing of the Democratic Party has 70 enhanced penalties, which my friend from California, Senator Feinstein, outlined every one of them. I gave her a list today. She asked what were in there to be sure. Every one of them. The liberal wing of the Democratic Party is for 100,000 cops. The liberal wing of the Democratic Party is for 125,000 new state prison cells. The liberal wing of the Democratic Party ain't the old wing I knew.
Awesome stuff, Joe. Hey, fun philosophical exercise. If you take the Liberal Party and replace all of their values with a pro-cop and pro-prison agenda, do you suppose that's still a liberal party? Is it a party of Theseus thing? Or are you just perhaps making up words? I could certainly take a dump in my fish tank and call it the new toilet, but that doesn't exactly make it a common fact, does it? The absolutely terrible bill also ended higher education grants for inmates and provided incentives to states to adopt harsher mandatory minimum sentences, which accelerated the already growing mass incarceration crisis that began under the policies of Nixon and Reagan. And while crime bill apologists will point out that the law only pertained to federal policies and therefore had limited impact on incarceration rates, the fact is that this law and the alarmism around it became a model for tough on crime policies that were adopted by state governments throughout the country. For example, there's the California Three Strikes Law, which imposed a life sentence for almost any crime, no matter how minor, if the defendant had 2 prior convictions for crimes defined as serious or violent by the California Penal Code. And so by that definition, if I, in the 90s,
Thank you for
broke into Hulk Hogan's house twice to steal his bandanas, that would be 2 instances of first-degree burglary and count as 2 strikes. Then, if 10 years later, I was caught shoplifting a copy of No Holds Barred, I could go to jail for life. I'm not saying it's good or right to deprive the Hulkster of his valuable skullet coverings or movie residuals, but just pointing out that this doesn't exactly feel like a life in jail offense. Maybe cute references to baseball, a game where people who strike out continue playing that game, are actually not cute when talking about a human life. So why? Why did we do this? Well, ever since the 1960s, America had seen a steady rise in crime. A fact that was, of course, exploited by bad faith political actors who pushed draconian policies that did little to solve the problem, often exacerbating it. And sensationalized media narratives about crime designed to scare the fuck out of white people for ratings continued throughout the 1990s, even when crime was starting to decline. Which is why the first black first lady of the United States was compelled to say this.
We need to take these people on. They are often connected to big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
Mind you, this super predator narrative was not just something concocted by the twisted mind of HR to the C. The term was coined by a young Princeton professor named John J. DiLulio, who used a single study of boys in Philadelphia to conclude that there would be an additional 30,000 young murderers, rapists, and muggers by the year 2000. And of course, the media instantly adopted this narrative and milked it like a sodden fear tit, a spooky boob, a shudder udder, a memory. But surprise, these predictions did not come to fruition. In fact, the violent crime rate continued to fall. A generation of remorseless young monsters did not surge together and create a Voltron of crime. But what did increase was the juvenile justice population as a result of the policies implemented in response to this manufactured hysteria, which is a nice way of saying we decided to put a bunch of kids in cages, something America loves to do, apparently. It's like our third most popular national sport now. And cases like this are why fear of crime politics is so dangerous. Because like I said, when people are scared, they are more likely to do dumb things. And in the early 1990s, the Democratic Party was really scared. It had lost 5 out of the last 6 presidential elections, and for decades had been labeled a party that was soft on crime. And since it's America we're talking about here, of course that label was created with a hearty dollop of racism.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush supports the death penalty for first-degree murderers. Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend. Weekend prison passes. Dukakis on crime.
Yeah, really scoop on that racism. Just slop it on there like a fistful of cream cheese, you honky freaks. This was a pretty infamous ad run during the 1988 presidential election between Republican candidate George H.W. Bush and Democratic candidate Michael Dukakis. During the summer before the election, Poppy Bush had latched onto the Willie Horton issue and made it a mainstay of his campaign speeches, releasing an ad attacking the Massachusetts furlough program, showing a series of prisoners walking through a revolving door. Soon after, the Willie Horton spot began running on television, and though this ad was ostensibly run by an independent group and was quickly pulled from circulation, television newscasts were more than happy to keep it on every screen in America. But whether or not the group that ran the ad, the National Security Political Action Committee, was in fact independent, or indeed working in concert with the Bush campaign, as many suspected, their goal was the same. As Bush's campaign strategist Lee Atwater noted, by the time we're finished, they're going to wonder whether Willie Horton is Dukakis' running mate. And while that's just a dick nest of horror in itself, what doesn't get talked about much is the fact that the use of furloughs for prisoners was not only widespread across the nation at the time, but also a largely successful program. It wasn't bad, boosted prisoner morale, and rarely resulted in problems. But one of the tried and true rules of American political history is to never let facts or the truth get in the way of the political advantages that can be gained by leveraging racism. And an additional advantage that the GOP had going for them was that this was also a peak era of colorblindness. Wait, Willie Horton was a black man, you say? Why? I hadn't even noticed. Everyone looks like the same gray square to me. And it certainly didn't help that when confronted with the accusation of being soft on crime at a presidential debate by one of the moderators invoking the theoretical rape and murder of his wife, Dukakis responded with as much emotion as a calculator dressed up in a beige suit.
Governor, if Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered, would you favor?
This is how batshit crazy American media is. This is batshit crazy. Not to say Dukakis wasn't the most pathetic, soft-hearted lib who literally was a neo-lib scumbag and would have made no fucking difference if he was elected. Still, this is one of the lowest blows of all time.
An irrevocable death penalty for the killer.
No, I don't, Bernard, and I think you know that I've opposed the death penalty during all of my life. I don't see any evidence that it's a deterrent, and I think there are better and more effective ways to deal with violent crime. We've done so in my own state. And
a few things. Weird and wildly inappropriate question, my God. But also, come on, man, you're a politician. Be like, how dare you ask that question, you disgusting media, you. Fake news, may you shit sand. I'm not saying Dukakis should have said exactly that. The shitting sand thing might be a bit odd, but at least show some version of a human-adjacent emotion for the sake of gosh. And yet, on the substance, this goober was absolutely right about the death penalty. That there is no evidence that it deters violent crime. And as an addendum, the death penalty also costs a ton of money, habitually executes a whole bunch of innocent people, and also happens to be just cruel and wrong. I don't have a graphic for that last claim. It's just like, is cruel and wrong. Like, if you believe that killing people is generally bad, with the exception of maybe self-preservation or puppet homicide, well then...
I remember this. If they would have flipped out, he would have caught him on Hinge. You don't flip out, but you're just like, you're disgusting. Trans women are not adult human females. Okay. Tim Pool, really bald.
And I'm not sure why you'd think that having our government systematically...
I legitimately think that wearing a beanie in your Twitter PFP or avatar, whatever the fuck it's called, is more bald than just being bald. Just having a totally bald head. It's less noticeably bald than wearing a beanie.
Kill people they've already caught and jailed isn't also bad. But whether Dukakis lost the election because he was King Dweeb or because America just wasn't ready for his luxurious eyebrows is hard to say. Maybe it's both. But one thing we do know is that the lesson taken from this election was that the Democrats lost, yet again, for being soft on crime, which is why you had the tough on crime pivot within the Democratic Party reach critical mass in the 1990s. But the 1988 election was really just the straw that broke the bushy-eyebrowed camel's back. Do camels have eyebrows? I'm not looking it up. They do now! But right-wing reactionaries had been meticulously melding the modern notions of race and crime for decades. As historian Joshua Zeitz has noted, in the 1970s and 1980s, Republican candidates successfully used violent crime as an issue to attract white voters. Fused with concerns over the economy, busing, and neighborhood integration, law and order politics dislodged millions of working and middle-class white voters from their former home in the Democratic Party. But of course, this is just the tip hot of the iceberg cold when it comes to the tremendous pants poop America took over this fear of crime. And anyone alive in the 90s probably knows what's about to lurch out of the shadows like Nick Fury at the end of Iron Man. But just like those Marvel films, we're gonna tease you a bit and go to some ads first. So just sit there and take in these bulbous ads. Thank you. 1800s including, but you love 80s and 90s, but we sort of skipped a detail. See, just like the Willie Horton ads or the impending crime. Oh, yeah, that was a lot of weed. Hi, I have skin. So we are back from those veiny ads, and we're talking about a series of manufactured crime scares that have existed since the days of crimped hair. We've jumped around a bit through the 80s and 90s, but we sort of skipped a detail. See, just like the Willie Horton ads or the impending threat of super predators in the 90s, the early 80s came with its own manufactured hysteria, a dangerous and destructive delirium that would devastate the lives of millions of people for years to come. And I'm not just talking about shoulder.
By the way, if you think that I'm stigmatizing bald people, you gotta be fucking kidding me. BASR Jim, thanks for the tier 2, and Sunshine Drea, thanks for the tier 3.
Shoulder pads.
A pregnant woman smokes crack cocaine. Her intense high lasts only a few seconds, but it can leave her unborn child with a lifetime of trouble. Medical experts say that in Miami, 10 crack babies are born every day. Statistics are nearly the same or worse in many major cities. It is a looming financial crisis at big city hospitals, a bill that is expected to top $300 million by 1991, a bill that you and I will have to pay.
During the 1980s and 90s, the media, politicians, and health experts were freaking the f*** out about so-called crack babies. According to the prevailing narrative, the children who were exposed to crack cocaine while in their mother's womb would be condemned to lives of severe mental and physical disabilities, and even worse, all of us would have to pay for them! The absolute horror! And so, considering this was obviously a public health crisis, politicians responded by dramatically expanding access to healthcare and implemented programs to help people struggling with drug addiction. Right?
In the most aggressive prosecution yet, 2 women in Central Florida have been charged not just with child abuse, but with delivery of a controlled substance to a minor, their infant children. If convicted, the women face 30 years in jail and drug testing by the state for the rest of their childbearing years.
See, to me, while drugs are involved, this isn't a drug case. To me, it's a child abuse case.
Oh, how interesting. Lee, terrible. Pretty fucking wild that a non-violent public health concern like drug use so quickly became insidiously conflated with a violent crime like child abuse. Seems like something we shouldn't ever do, but put a pin in that notion for the moment, because the thing is, it turns out that the moral panic about crack babies was kicked off by a study of just 23 infants that the lead researcher now says was blown out of proportion. In fact, subsequent studies since then have consistently concluded that prenatal exposure exposure to crack cocaine, which happens when a woman smokes crack cocaine while pregnant, has little or no effect on the long-term development of a child. I mean, you probably still shouldn't do it, but the fact that the crack baby myth was built on bullshit has not stopped this fable from persisting to this day. It certainly didn't stop lawmakers at the time from implementing harsh penalties for crack cocaine possession, which was of course richly ironic because meanwhile our government was, at best, looking the other way when it came to the trafficking of crack cocaine into our cities, and at worst, actively participating in the drug trade. And this is, of course, the part where we talk about the war on drugs, the aforementioned Nick Fury of America's crime panic. Because you can't talk.
I didn't want you to know Jacobin, putting together this article was probably bad. Because hold on. We probably, hey, listen. Their articles are being read by too many people, okay? You need to slow down the number of people that are reading us. If it's only 400 people reading our shit, we're winning. We're winning. Don't you just hate when Hassan and I spread information that it reaches thousands of people? Isn't that bad for the left? Don't you wish it was only just like a couple people? Don't you wish it was only a couple people?
And this is, of course, the part where we talk about the war on drugs, the aforementioned Nick Fury of America's crime panic.
You'll never let that interview go. Because it was some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard, and it was funny.
Can't talk about crime without the old wad. And just for goofabouts and snickerpusses, let's allow the guy who...
Exposure to cocaine can slow fetal growth, but the development of the brain and body catches up to as these children grow up. It has not, as widely thought in the 80s and 90s, produced joyless or unmanageable children. Really interesting.
Started the whole thing to have the honor of introducing the topic.
I am glad that in this administration we have increased the
Quappa Mooch, thank you for the 7 months. And X Quigley, thank you for the tier 1.
The amount of money for handling the problem of dangerous drugs sevenfold. It will be $600 million this year. More money will be needed in the future. I want to say, however, that despite our budget problems, to the extent money can help in meeting the problem of dangerous drugs, it will be available. This is one area where we cannot have budget cuts because we must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one in the United States, the problem of dangerous drugs.
Now, there is a whole lot to say about the war on drugs. There are many, many books that have been written about this topic that you should read if that's your kink, which, I mean, okay, everyone's got their thing, I guess. But let me provide you with a brief synopsis. The war on drugs has been...
I doubt I'm going to post that interview because it's just so
no,
worthless,
the word is
to be honest.
bad. A failure from the start. And super racist. And, well, just... really, really bad. Declared by Nixon and then expanded by both Reagan and Clinton, the brutal tactics and policies that were deployed in this campaign have been a major contributor to the massive rise in our prison population over the decades, and ultimately landed us, USA #1, in both the total prison population and incarceration rate per capita. Over the decades, the war on drugs has justified harsher penalties for nonviolent crimes, increased police surveillance, made getting high scary, and has exacerbated the militarization of the police. It also rationalized the increased use of a practice known as civil asset forfeiture, which allows police to seize property as long as they believe that the assets in question were somehow connected to criminal activity. They don't even need to prove it. In fact, on an annual basis, police sometimes take more stuff from American citizens than burglars do. And this particular policy was championed by none other than our current president, Joe Biden. That guy again. Boy, he really seems to keep showing up, doesn't he? Dude just loves attention for awful things that led us to our current political moment while being incapable of admitting his and his party's role in it, and thus making him incapable and unwilling to do what needs to be done to fix it. And of course, the thrust of all the politics and policies surrounding the war on drugs was a deliberate scheme to leverage the racist fears of the white population for political gain. And this is not hyperbole, because remember that guy, Lee Atwater, that I mentioned earlier, the Poppy Bush strategist who
treated my wife like a criminal during our first kid's birthday and wouldn't let us leave the hospital without a drug screen of our newborn because my wife admitting to smoking pot before. Jesus Christ, man, that's terrible.
The racist Willie Horton scheme. Well, it just so happens that he'd been a part of this sort of thing before. During an infamous interview in 1981, while he was working in the Reagan White House, Atwater fessed up to the nature of the racist Southern strategy deployed by Nixon.
He's obviously gonna beep it, right?
Using words that I'm not particularly inclined to say out loud, so I will let him do it.
You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger.
By 1968, you can't say that hurts your backfire, so you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now, you're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than white. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than.
Yeah! That one word we kept bleeping out? It's the one you assume it is. And remember, after that interview, he went on to become Bush's campaign strategist. Bush saw that man and thought, now there's someone I could really use. If this isn't enough, Nixon advisor John Ehrlichman's confession made the specific connection between the war on drugs and the political exploitation of racism even more explicit than old Michael Richards did in that clip. And so it's not a surprise that the policies that came out of the war on drugs exacerbated racial inequality and rolled back many of the gains that had been won during the civil rights era. As an example, consider the sentencing difference between crack and powder cocaine. The 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act created a 100-to-1 disparity between being arrested with crack versus being arrested with cocaine. Specifically, only 5 grams of crack constitutes a 5-year mandatory minimum sentence, while it takes a whopping 500 grams of powder cocaine to trigger that same result. Just to really hammer that home, here's what a little over 5 grams of crack looks like. And here's what 500 grams of cocaine looks like. The latter is like an entire Aaron Sorkin screenplay worth of blow, while that measly rock of crack couldn't even write a single episode of The West Wing. Personal photos, by the way. It's the same essential substance, same basic dangers and addiction levels, only crack was associated with black people, and powder cocaine was associated with white people. And the nature of the enforcement of drug crimes was wildly unequal.
Hey, chat! What drugs? See, Hunter used powder cocaine, so Joe Biden needed to keep those punishments low.
Despite the fact that white people and black people use drugs at basically the same rate. In fact, the rates of drug use are more or less equal across racial and class divides. Because, throughout history, human beings like to get high. And some of the cooler animals too, if I'm being fair and balanced, TMCR 420 bra. And yet, in the 1970s, black people were approximately twice as likely as white people to be arrested for drug-related offenses. By 1988, that went up to 5 times as likely. It's almost like the system itself is racist. And I wish there was a better term for this dynamic, but there's not. Maybe we should teach about this in schools or something, so then I would know what the word is. Or like how, as author Michelle Alexander noted in her book, The New Jim Crow, a survey was conducted in 1995 asking the following question. Would you close your eyes for a second, envision a drug user, and describe that person to me? The startling results were published in the Journal of Alcohol and Drug Education. 95% of respondents pictured a black drug user, while only 5% imagined other racial groups. This is all despite the studies around this showing that the vast majority of drug users are college-aged white people, meaning that when you close your eyes to envision a drug user, you should be picturing something like this. She goes on to note that the same group of respondents also perceive the typical drug trafficker as black. Also not true. In fact, white people are more likely to sell drugs, but black people are more likely to be arrested for selling drugs. And one of the main reasons for this is that our history of systemic racism has relegated black people into inner cities, areas of concentrated poverty that have been heavily policed, using similar counterinsurgency tactics that the US military uses as an occupying force in other nations. And so perhaps the brutal policies and practices and bloodthirsty penalties
That's a pretty good book, The New Jim Crow. I recommend it.
In response to fears over crime, real and manufactured, have been implemented to maintain the political and economic advantages of white supremacy. Perhaps not, but perhaps. The bottom line is that a deliberate political strategy racialized the very notion of crime itself and successfully equated the word crime with danger and violence, regardless of the type of crime and whether or not it was dangerous or violent in nature. This campaign succeeded in further cementing the image of a young black man as a dangerous, violent criminal in the imaginations of white Americans. This is how a child walking home from the store wearing a hoodie and carrying Skittles and iced tea could be portrayed as a scary black man, or how a little kid playing in the park with a toy gun could be killed within 2 seconds of police arriving on the scene, or how 5 adolescents could be convicted of a crime they didn't commit, then have a corny real estate guy take out full-page ads in 4 New York newspapers to call for reinstating the death penalty for them, and then get away with refusing to apologize even after they were proven innocent. Epilogue, and then that corny real estate guy became the United States president, specifically on a platform of building a big wall to keep drug-dealing, raping Mexicans away. Sequel, and might again. What I'm getting at here is that America is kind of an apartheid state. Like, I know that sounds hyperbolic, but it really seems like our crime policies are designed to divide us by race, and to continue present policies is to make permanent the division of our country into 2 societies. One, largely black and poor, located in the central cities. The other, predominantly white and affluent, located in the suburbs and in outlying areas. And I think we've known this for a while. In fact, literally the last sentence I said isn't my own words, but a direct quote from something called the Kerner Commission, as was this.
Continue present policies to make permanent the division of our country into 2 societies. One largely black and poor, located in the central cities. The other predominantly white and affluent, located in the suburbs and outlying areas. Wow. They admit it.
White society is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it. White institutions maintain it. And white society condones it. Also, actually a direct quote from this Kerner Commission report, which was created in fucking 1967. I actually changed out the word Negro for black because it would have been super weird not to. Pulled a little Nicole Hannah-Jones on you all. April Fools, that's all month, right? And the reason I did this was, well, boy, what an indictment of this country that an analysis from the late 60s would be just as true, if not more true today. That I can pull quotes from this 50-plus-year-old document that sounds exactly like the kind of issues we're still dealing with today. Before super predators and crack babies and the war on drugs, in 1967, President Lyndon Johnson formed the Kerner Commission to determine the causes of the violent racial uprisings that were taking place in America's cities at the time. But nobody, certainly not the administration, expected the commission to conclude that bad policing practices, a flawed justice system, unscrupulous consumer credit practices, poor or inadequate housing, high unemployment, voter suppression, and other culturally embedded forms of racial discrimination all converged to propel violent upheaval on the streets of African American neighborhoods in American cities, north and south, east and west. In order to address this crisis, the Commission recommended a vast expansion of our social safety net and more adequate social services, a massive jobs program, and vigorous action to end racial discrimination in hiring and discrimination for the formerly incarcerated, increased funding for disadvantaged students, and sharply increased efforts to end segregation in schools, as well as an increase in low and moderate income housing outside of ghetto areas, along with a commitment to overcoming the prevailing patterns of racial segregation. It also included a strong condemnation of the increased militarization of the police. So, in response to the findings of the commission,
did the
we
exact
enthusiastically implemented all the policies it recommended, right? No, of course not. Happy April Fool's Month. Unfortunately and predictably, the backlash to the report was immediate. Polls showed that 53% of white Americans condemned the claim that racism had caused the riots, while 58% of black Americans agreed with the findings. And as the report ominously noted in its conclusion, one of the first witnesses to be invited to appear before this commission was Dr. Kenneth B. Clark, a distinguished and perceptive scholar. Referring to the reports of earlier riot commissions, he said, I read that report of the 1919 riot in Chicago, and it is as if I were reading the report of the investigating committee on the Harlem riot of 35, the report of the investigating committee on the Harlem riot of 43, the report of the McCone Commission on the Watts riot. I must again in candor say to you members of this commission, it is a kind of Alice in Wonderland, with the same moving picture reshown over and over again, the same analysis, the same recommendations, and the same inaction. But even worse than simply ignoring the findings and recommendations in the report, as a nation, we freaking sprinted in the opposite direction.
And the best part is that these disgusting liberal freaks, and I'm talking about Joe Biden right now, will pretend like we ever gave black people a fair shake. We never have. Not once. Not once.
Instead of accepting the notion that systemic racism had created the conditions for violence and inequality in the segregated and economically deprived inner cities that white supremacy had intentionally created and maintained, we promoted racist ideas that continued the American tradition of pathologizing the individual behaviors of black people in order to perpetuate inequality and maintain white supremacy. Instead of expanding our social safety net and making a concerted effort to address inequality and racial discrimination, we gutted the social safety net and pretended that the era of racial discrimination was a thing of the past. We also went in the opposite direction when it came to the Commission's recommendation on policing. Here's how Jelani Cobb, author of the book The Essential Kerner Commission Report, described the analysis and recommendations made by the commissions on the matter of police.
Law enforcement are called for a whole array of social concerns that actually have nothing to do with the enforcement of the law. And what this does is create just simply more points of contact between the average civilian and the average law enforcement officer, with the potential of something going wrong each time and something potentially going disastrously wrong each time. And so what they said was that there needed to be other social service organizations or outlets that could address concerns that didn't require someone with a gun to show up. And in a very succinct way, they were encapsulating the idea that has been come to be known as defund the police now.
That's right, we knew. We fucking knew what to do, and yet we didn't do it. And again, we instead did the opposite. It's kind of a thing we absolutely love to do in this country. And this all brings us back to the present moment, and serves as a harrowing harbinger of things to come, because I don't need magical time-traveling powers to know what's on the horizon. I mean, I'll take time-traveling powers if you got them, but if the tough-on-crime posturing of Republicans during the confirmation hearings of Ketanji Brown Jackson is any indication, the GOP is going to make crime a top 2022 issue. And what about the Democrats? Well, if their behavior in the aftermath of the 2020 elections is any indication, conservative Democrats will blame progressives for pushing the defund the police agenda as a scapegoat for Democratic losses. Hey, Democrats, maybe you should have tried fixing American democracy while you had the chance before you started blaming progressives for your utter cowardice, is what I yell out into the terrifying and yet probable future. And thanks to the tremendous amount of weed drifting through my veins, like time rivers on a river web, I'm almost certain they can hear me. You don't like the slogan, defund the police? Fine. I don't care about whether or not you like the slogan. What I care about are the policies that you support. And I care about the role that
the thing is, they are against the policies of trying to, because like the Democrats they don't want to expand the social safety net. Every single time you see someone say, I'm a lib, I like capitalism, but I like a social safety net. Show me a single fucking one of their politicians that are actually expanding the social safety net. Just show me one. Who's expanding it? It's not happening. The only people that expand the social safety net are the people that are unafraid leftists. Everyone else maybe are fucking useless. And if you look at history, it's trade unionists, socialists that actually expanded the social safety net. It wasn't people who called themselves liberals. What do you think about slogans? I think that slogans are fine. The purpose of the defund the police slogan wasn't to convince a suburban soccer mom with a $600,000 home. It was to organize and validate the feelings of intercity minority groups that felt over-policed and underserved in other areas, who felt alienated from the very system that was oppressing them as they saw their own relatives and friends and people who looked like them get gunned down on the street and treated like less than human. Defund the Police was extremely successful at igniting a protest movement of disenfranchised and alienated young people all across the country. It was never a political slogan of a politician.
police play in our society. If you want to increase funding for the police for the purpose of addressing the nationwide rape kit backlog, fine, super. If you want to increase funding for the police so that they all stay at home and aren't out there harassing and killing people, also fine, but less super, because if your issue is really that you thought the slogan was bad and not that you disagreed with the actual policies, it would be incredibly easy to adjust your messaging around the issue. Even this former cop was able to do this when she was asked about the defund the police movement by the Lord Commissar Mean Girl.
I just want to know from you, do you support defunding and removing police from American communities? And if not, why do you think there's such a hard time being differentiated right now between defunding and reforming police departments?
So, Megan, I think that a big part of this conversation really is about reimagining how we do public safety in America, which I support, which is this. We have confused the idea that to achieve safety, you put more cops on the street, instead of understanding to achieve safe and healthy communities, you put more resources into the public education system of those communities, into affordable housing, into home ownership, into access to capital for small businesses, access to health care regardless of how much money people have. That's how you achieve safe and healthy communities.
All
in all
liberalism,
honesty,
honestly.
no. Well, in some
She's terrible. She sucks. I'm sorry, I disagree with Cody here. Like, access, affordable housing, this is all bullshit. This is all bullshit buzzwords. You need to have free education, high quality public housing or social housing. You need public schooling, not private schooling. That's high quality and equally available to everyone. The quality of a public school should be the same no matter where it is in the country. It should all be high quality, no matter where you are. And yeah, areas where people are poor and disenfranchised are going to need more money than areas of people that have a lot of wealth and extra social capital. Yeah, it's going to take more money to educate a child whose parents are illiterate than the parents of a fucking professor. This is common sense.
Honesty, probably some notes, but a pretty good answer. If only this former cop was in a position to influence the current president of the United States.
But it's all see, the thing is, it's babble. It's not actually a project. You're allowing yourself to get tricked by babble. She doesn't have a real project to do any of the things she said. What's her plan for affordable housing? What's her plan for healthcare? There is none. And they will do nothing.
Buttigieg. I need like a mnemonic device for that or something.
We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them.
Okay. In fairness, maybe he said fund the police, like F-U-N, like dress them all up like Jack Sparrow. But I'm pretty sure that Joe bottles in dick entice nurses. Biden just said he wanted to give the police more money. And see, I learned to remember your name this time, Joe, as we all should, because you have consistently been on the wrong side of criminal justice issues for your entire career. Also weird that that former cop was behind you clapping for some reason. Maybe there was a really big mosquito in there. And sure, Biden has acknowledged that some of his past stances were mistakes and has done the bare minimum by implementing a pause on federal executions and has proposed increases in spending for violence prevention programs. So this guy may be marginally better on these issues than the fascist alternative, but unfortunately, he is not the answer to our thoughts and prayers. When you hear people like JRB tout solutions like community policing, run for the hills. Why would we want police to be more integrated into our communities? Police fucking suck, man. They're just former high school bullies with badges, guns, and qualified immunity. Also, they dress stupid. Fucking armed milkmen. It is whack. I don't want them showing up at Warmbo's kids' Little League games. Besides, they inevitably use this expanded access to the community to, you know, spy on you. And I totally understand how all of this can leave you feeling helpless, given our history on the issue. But as BrainScan's Edward Furlong has taught us, there is no fate but what we make for ourselves. And more recent history with regards to the criminal justice system has also shown us that things can actually change. Because since the publishing of Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow in 2010, a rare example of a good version of a bipartisan consensus has begun to emerge. That harsh penalties for non-violent drug crimes are maybe not such a good thing. There is a growing recognition that the trillion-dollar war on drugs has been an utter failure. As a result, 18 states have legalized marijuana, and 38 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized medical marijuana. And some reforms have been made in reducing the harsh penalties for nonviolent drug crimes. There's still a long way to go, but some progress has been made. So make sure to celebrate 420 properly today, folks, by filling a dirt bike gas tank with high-potency indica and sucking on the tailpipe. Except legally speaking, don't actually do that. But, as Danielle Sered warns in her book Until We Reckon, if your goal is to end the mass incarceration crisis, simply addressing the sentencing for nonviolent crime is not going to solve the problem. Quote, just as we cannot incarcerate our way out of violence, we cannot reform our way out of mass incarceration without taking on the question of violence. And as a quick side note, our goal should be an end to mass incarceration, because while this country has only 5% of the world population, we have nearly 25% of the world's incarcerated population. That is supremely fucked up. America's a bad country. We did a bad job with that. Yet addressing our approach to violent crime is a much more difficult political challenge. But as that former cop suggested earlier, maybe we ought to start reimagining public safety. And it starts right there with that term, public safety. Because if public safety is truly your goal, it makes it easier to start recognizing which policies actually create more public safety. For instance, maybe using the police and the court system to inundate citizens with fines and fees for low-level violations in order to fund the city government, as was done in Ferguson, is not about promoting public safety. In fact, preying on the vulnerable in this way actually makes us less safe. And if you start truly looking at things through this lens of public safety, it can be very illuminating. Consider that tweet by the NYPD we discussed earlier, boasting about their arrest of 12 individuals. Do those arrests make anyone any safer? Or do they just protect the interests of large corporations? Maybe enacting policies...
Well, hey, put some parents in prison, leave some children unparented, increase the expense, put some children in foster care, ruin people's employability. It does a lot. Ruins, 10, 15 families' lives. It's pretty good.
Aim to create a society where people aren't so desperate that they need to steal diapers and medicine is what would actually make us safer. Because some of the things that we do know contribute to levels of crime are income inequality, joblessness, and poverty, specifically concentrated poverty. And as an additional bonus, those corporations run by cartoon paper bears wouldn't have to worry about sticky fingers in their toiletries aisle. And if your true goal was creating the conditions for safe and healthy communities, you would probably start out with many of the recommendations made in the Kerner Report more than half a century ago. And add on to that universal health care, free at the point of service. Ooh, baby, wouldn't that be neato? To live in a world that wanted to enact policies to lift people out of poverty. Half a century old policies in some cases. But in all honesty, those corporations would rather maintain the economic leverage they have over employees to keep their pay low and continue to outsource their security to the publicly funded police. It's a system that works extremely well for them. Besides, if we actually did adequately fund and promote the basic needs of the human beings in our society, taxes might go up for these large corporations. Can and should and won't. And while our current system works overtime to protect the specific interests of capital, it does very little to address the needs of people who have been more significantly harmed by crime. In particular, the survivors of violent crime. And shouldn't that be one of the major goals of our system? Seems obvious. After all, the thing that actually makes crime bad is the harm that it causes people. That's why it's a crime. It would be logical to always think of crime first in terms of helping the victims, right? And yet we focus most of our efforts on punishing the perpetrators of crime, while doing very little to repair the harm inflicted on the survivors of crime. We tend to offer them little more than locking up or executing the person who caused them harm. And sometimes that's not really what survivors of crime actually need or want. In fact, there's been research showing that not only do the victims or families of victims largely get left twisting in the wind after a criminal trial, but most of them actually find less closure if the death penalty is used. This is thanks to the constant appeals process often prolonging their grief. The idea that punishing the criminal brings closure is a completely unproven idea, and yet we love to use it as the reasoning behind a lot of harsh sentences. We prop up the victims to justify our criminal justice system despite never actually endeavoring to help them. Not to mention that the brutality of a prison system not aimed at reform plus the threat of execution means that no one is ever going to want to confess to a crime in in a way that might bring better closure to the victims. We'd rather be wrathful than seek resolution. Cut off all the noses to spite all the faces. I'm pretty sure we just did an entire Batman about this. And for the people who do eventually get out of prison, as most of them do, they are met with significant barriers to rejoining society in constructive ways. Barriers that we as a society have intentionally placed in their way. These factors may be why we have such high recidivism rates, as informally incarcerated people turning back to crime. And so not only are we not meeting the needs of survivors, but we are failing to hold those who cause harm accountable and making it more likely that they will continue to cause harm and endure more violence when they have supposedly paid their debt to society. It seems like a really, really bad system. In fact, whenever a restorative justice system is practiced, as in a system where the offender is held accountable by allowing the victim of the crime to confront them along with members of the community, a system built on the idea of rehabilitation, well, nearly every study shows that an offender is far less likely to reoffend in the future. And it's kind of ironic that the same politicians that deride the nanny state are the very same ones that promote the notion of punishment as the central tenet of our criminal justice philosophy. And while at first glance the notion of accountability may seem like the easy way out in response to a terrible crime that has caused unspeakable harm to individuals, if you sit and think about it for a minute, there is nothing easy about sincerely taking true accountability for something like that. And there's nothing easy about endeavoring to repair that harm. Also, things that aren't easy: switching to a system built on rehabilitation. It won't happen overnight, and some of the solutions can only be solved by massive federal government intervention. But a lot of the policies surrounding the role of the police take place at the local level, and so we can and must do our part, for both everyone's sake and for the sake of the writer of this episode's mother, who is losing sleep over the heartbreaking case of Melissa Lucio.
Now, this is an old case that is gaining a lot of new attention. It happened 15 years ago in South Texas. Lucio was convicted of capital murder after the death of her daughter, Mariah Alvarez. Now, according to the DA's office, the 2-year-old had signs of abuse on her body. But family members claim Mariah's death was an accident, saying she fell down the stairs. The Texas woman is now on death row, scheduled for execution on April 27th.
Melissa is scheduled to be executed 7 days from now on April 27th for the crime of allegedly murdering her 2-year-old daughter, a crime that sure seems to have not actually occurred and in all likelihood was a terrible accident where her daughter fell down a flight of stairs. Having maintained her innocence for 14 years after a corrupt district attorney obtained a false confession after 7 hours of interrogation, Melissa Lucio does not deserve to die in our shoddy and bloodthirsty system. So please go to the link on screen to help stop this one injustice. Also, wow, I hope you didn't actually get high to watch this video like I told you to, because pretty bleak but important stuff. Like, yes, I want you to care about this, but I also don't want you to completely lose all hope. We can have joyful things in a terrible world. For example, weed. Also, this picture of my dog. What else is good? Corn on the cob is amazing. Bugs are neat. You get the point. Or if you don't because you're too high, the point is that we need a system fundamentally built on compassion, where people are both held accountable but rehabilitated, where victims see justice but are also cared for, and especially where our goal toward crime is never to frame it as an evil entity or sinister epidemic that needs to be attacked and snuffed out like the media and cops and government loves to do, but rather as a sign of systemic failure, a symptom of a larger problem. Like, if you get terrible pain farts, the answer isn't to try and punish your own ass, unless you're into that, but rather try to figure out what's causing those farts and change things on a fundamental level. Like perhaps not eating so much corn on the cob when you're allergic to it, even though it's buttery and delicious and I want some right now. This got away from me, but I think you understand. And so maybe if we sought to prevent crime from happening in the first place by providing for people's basic needs, actually respond to the needs of survivors of crime, and pursued a strategy of accountability and rehabilitation, we might have no need for an ineffective system that instead pushes people to the brink of starvation, surveils and harasses them, habitually assaults them, seizes their property, inflicts traumatizing punishments on them, that perpetuates cycles of poverty and violence and fucking kills them. Maybe it's not just crime we should be afraid of, but rather the current system in place to allegedly address crime. And just maybe, once we all sober up, we can thrive for something better than what we have now.
Oh, Mr. Cody!
Dang. Got him right in the face. Don't worry. He's incapable of dying. It's like a fun game for us.
Wombo is happy penetrated by Mr. Cody.
And now it's less fun.
Every time he plays with Warmo, he's penetrating him.
All right, I'm gonna pull out the arrow. Do not call it me pulling out. Wowee, what a fun-filled episode that was.
We did it. Holy fucking hell, that was a marathon. That was a goddamn marathon.
Be sure to like and subscribe
and
leave a comment about what a fun-filled episode this was.
Cody.
And we've got a patreon.com/some-more-news. We've got merch at a merch store. There's links.
All right, everybody. That was some more news, fear of crime politics. I think that was a pretty thorough survey of the issue. I don't have much more to say. All right, chat. Well, howdy doody. But would it need to be that strong because the centrifugal force kept the cable in orbit? Oh no. You want some ganja? I've got 1,000 milligrams. Who would do that much? Who would possibly consume that much? All right, let's make fun of this. Let's make fun of Ben Shapiro. I was told this is good content. So we're gonna try it out. We're gonna try it. I'm gonna trust the chatter. Making fun of Ben Shapiro talking about renewable energy. Let's fucking go.
In a while, hope you didn't forget about that. Recently, Ben Shapiro has returned to the college campus and he is putting some dumb college students in their place. There are a few other segments I do want to go into. For example, there was a discussion regarding transgenderism and biology, but for today we'll just talk about this one regarding climate change. Maybe for the upcoming weeks we'll touch on the other topics for a bit. Upvote this video if that's what you want to see.
Hi Ben, my name's Ember. In 2021, you said that the potential rise of global temperatures by 4 degrees Celsius due to climate change is, quote, not an emergency, and even made fun of top scientists for calling climate change a climate emergency. A new study by the Journal of Natural Science says that if by the end of the century, climate change will total up to 83 million deaths because of climate-related causes.
Yeah, they're wrong. Sorry, go ahead, but continue.
You just say they're wrong. I think Ben Shapiro legitimately should be arrested and charged with crimes against the climate. Crimes against the climate. Did Romeo drop the tweet yesterday? Yes. If I were in charge, I would set up a climate crimes court, which would go around and it would have extraordinary rendition power to arrest all fossil fuel executives, all climate science deniers, and we would take them to the same black site. We would free all the people from Guantanamo Bay, and we put Rex Tillerson in their place. That's my political platform. Same energy. This war will destabilize the entire Middle East region and set off a global shockwave of anti-Americanism versus no, it won't. This is from March 26, 2003, chat. The Onion are time travelers. This is the most legendary post that's ever existed. All right, let's keep going.
Continue, but I'll explain why. Go ahead.
I'm wondering, Ben, why you believe that climate change is not an emergency.
Okay, because they're wrong.
Okay, so the paper that is being referred to here was published during the summer of 2021, titled The Morality Cost of Carbon.
Why is he lecturing?
We have a lot of estimates.
Why is he lecturing? What does he have to lecture on? What is his contribution? I mean, like, goddamn.
When it comes to carbon emissions and how it impacts our future, and this paper uses a new model to estimate how many lives will be lost, and in turn also gives us a rough number on how much CO2 equates to a single death. Let's take a look at the abstract. Many studies project that climate change can cause a significant number of excess deaths. Yet, in integrated assessment models that determine the social cost of carbon and prescribe optimal climate policy, human mortality impacts are limited and not updated to the latest scientific understanding. This study extends the DICE 2016 IAM to explicitly include temperature-related mortality impacts by estimating a climate mortality damage function. We introduce a metric, the mortality cost of carbon, that estimates the number of deaths caused by emissions of 1 additional metric ton of CO2. In the baseline emission scenario, the 2020 MCC is 2.26 times 10 to the negative 4 excess deaths per metric ton of 2020 emissions. This implies that adding 4,434 metric tons of carbon dioxide in 2020, equivalent to the lifetime emissions of 3.5 average Americans, causes 1 excess death globally, an expectation between 2020 to 2100. Wow. Incorporating mortality costs increases the 2020 SEC from 5
American lives kills someone. That is an incredible statistic. Every 3.5 Americans kills another person. Holy shit.
$7 to $256 per metric ton in the baseline emission scenario. Optimal climate policy changes from gradual emissions reduction starting in 2050 to full decarbonization by 2050 when mortality is considered. Okay, so for the sake of keeping this video simplistic, let's not go into the algorithms used to create this model. As we saw in the video, Ben Shapiro said these scientists are just wrong, plain wrong. I wonder what his argument for that could be.
So now here's the, sorry, I didn't let you get to the question mark. The reason that they are wrong is because all of these studies are done in the absence of mitigating measures. So as I've said before, when I talk about climate change, when you're talking about climate change, there are a couple of things human beings can do. And by the way, I accept IPCC estimates. They range from...
And here we are, chat. Ben Shapiro used to say climate change wasn't real. Then he has to say, well, it's real, but did humans cause it? And now it's, well, humans cause it, but it's worse to do something about it than it is to just produce wealth with the capitalism and then just pay for mitigation. And then he'll step smoothly into the, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there with climate change. We got to kill all the brown people.
Sort of the mild, like 1.5 degrees Celsius, all the way up to the not very mild, like 4 degrees Celsius, again, over the course of the century. And because there is this range, the more extreme versions of this, the 4 degrees Celsius, whenever you read the IPCC reports, which I have, when you read
those... says that we are on track for 3 degrees. So we're not on track for 1.5. They say we're on track for 3, but it could be 4 depending upon the feedbacks. Depending upon whether, like, we melt the permafrost and a bunch of methane emissions go out.
Those reports, they say in them that they have very low confidence that some of the more catastrophic sort of predictions are going to occur. They will say low to moderate confidence. The less catastrophic predictions, they'll say more like high confidence or fair high confidence, that kind of stuff.
So in case you didn't get the idea of his argument, he's saying that these scientific studies are based on the most catastrophic outcome as predicted with no mitigation efforts whatsoever, where everyone pollutes as much as they want, or in other words, the worst case scenario as predicted with up to 4 degrees Celsius of temperature change. I don't know what kind of papers he's read to lead him to believe that all scientific climate predictions are the same, but from what I've read, real scientific papers at least, they usually acknowledge that kind of scenario they're trying to predict. And this paper is no exception. The model is based on current trends, which leads to at least a 2-degree increase towards 2050, which is actually what seems to be the consensus on where we are headed right now, in up to 4 degrees in 2100. According to the article, in total, we find that there are 83 million projected cumulative deaths between 2020 and 2100 in the central estimate in the DICE baseline emission scenario. By the end of the century, the projected 4.6 million excess yearly deaths would put climate change 6th on the 2017 global burden of disease risk factor risk list ahead of outdoor air pollution and just below obesity. We have shown that in the DICE baseline emission scenario that results in 4.1 degree warming by 2100, the central estimate MCC is significant. Now you're probably thinking, but stick, that's 4.1 degrees of warming, which is the extreme end that Ben Shapiro was talking about. But no, the estimates that he is referring to are over the next few decades, closer to 2050. 4.1 degrees is by 2100, many decades later, so 4.1 is not an extreme scenario. And of course, you can always say that this can be improved since we don't know what the future is like and perhaps we'll have some sort of technological breakthrough, but you can't say this isn't an estimate based on a very, very likely scenario. Of course, I don't expect Ben Shapiro to have read this paper at all. Maybe he reads scientific papers, maybe he doesn't, but we can't expect him to have seen every one that has been...
He's just a lying, sophist piece of garbage. He just lies about everything. He's a fucking piece of shit.
Published out there. So he just made a bullshit claim that that scientific paper must have used the most extreme scenario, which as we've seen here absolutely does not. So that's his first claim.
And by the way, this excess death thing is just, it's not related to anything but directly climate related deaths, heat caused death, like weather related death. It's not talking about geopolitical instability. It's not talking about 1 billion refugees. It's talking about, oh, we know this is how much temperature, what temperature deaths look like. What will be the temperature death? It's not an understanding of it's not a prediction of the world political system. Climate change will be way more disruptive. Also, it's not a good study of, say, like the impacts on food production. This is just one element of many, many other, a very generalized, straightforward prediction.
Okay, here is the thing. when people suggest that there is not going to be any sort of mitigation measures, this is wrong, or adaptation. So there's two ways you can deal with it. One is mitigation, which is we all stop driving cars, we stop using electricity, we don't have kids anymore, right? We really cut down on our carbon usage in ways that are catastrophic to the world economy. And what it really mostly does is it says to people in the developing world, hey, you're screwed. Because those are the people who really need carbon-based emissions. It's very easy for those of us who live in extraordinarily prosperous societies to say, you know what, I'm cutting down my carbon emissions a little bit because we live in very prosperous societies.
While yes, developing countries are very heavily dependent on carbon-based energies, they also emit a lot less than developed countries do, and they are the first to feel the effects of climate change. Don't pretend that the burden is equally shared between developed and developing countries. It's not. Our CO2 output is magnitudes higher than any developing country, and we have the money plus technology to do something about it, and yet we choose not to, partly because half the population here doesn't believe in climate change, and those people write our laws and determine our scientific funding.
In order for us to take the mitigation measures that would be necessary in order to dramatically lower the trajectory of global climate change, you'd have to get China to sign on, which they will not. You'd have to get India to sign on, which they will not. Those are the two largest carbon-based emitters on planet Earth, and we live in a geopolitical world in which a carbon emission from China counts the same as a carbon emission from the United States.
Ah, the classic pointing your finger at others. They're not doing anything, why should we? First of all, these two countries have significantly higher populations than the United States, and if we compare the output per capita, the US is leading by a long mile. Second of all, China is literally the leader of renewable energy and technology. Why does nobody talk about this and think that China is doing nothing? They're doing a hell of a lot more than the United States is doing, trying to cover a population many times higher than that of the US while having a huge portion of their country still in developing mode. At the very least, they're doing significant work and investing in a transition. And for the sake of argument, let's just say that China is doing nothing, which absolutely isn't true. Even if we give you that, why not be the first to set an example? We shouldn't even be looking at other countries at all. We should be focusing on what we ourselves can do.
Which says, again, this doesn't mean there's nothing we can do. It means what we ought to be doing is the thing that will prevent the 83 million deaths, which is why I'm very confident it will prevent the 83 million deaths, adaptation. This means, for example, that we build seawalls. The simple fact of the matter is that
we build seawalls! Imagine the United States of America actually building infrastructure.
New Orleans exists below sea level. When the seawalls, when levees were breached because the levees were poorly built, it killed 10,000 people.
What I suggested, Ben, is instead of pretending like you know what the paper is talking about, just openly admit you haven't read the paper and you'll get to it. No one is going to criticize you for not reading 1 out of a million scientific papers in preparation for a Q&A. That would be miles better than you sitting there pretending you know what the paper is talking about and then attempting to debunk it. When the paper estimated this mortality number, it was doing so primarily by looking at excess deaths caused by temperature-related complications, such as heat stroke, and not from indirect causes such as flooding or sea level rise, which leads to a lot of other complications. So since infrastructure destruction caused by sea level rise was not a consideration, it doesn't factor into the 83 million. But this also tells us that the number is possibly much higher and also doesn't include things like displacements, lower quality of life, etc. Of course, no one is saying this model is perfect. It's just a prediction, just like the many other predictions we have out there. But it's still a valuable tool, and for this model to have any value, you at least have to interpret it correctly, wouldn't you say, Ben?
When the levees, last time around, this last year, there was a major hurricane. It swept directly through the exact same area, and pretty much no one was killed. The reason being, the levees were much better built. When you're looking at coastal, low-lying areas, seawalls have been built in places in Miami, in places in Seattle.
Miami has sunshine floods now. Miami has sunny day flooding now. Did you know that, chat? Did you know that it just starts, sea levels in Miami are rising? Now they just have like days where water just flows onto the streets through the drainage system. This is not something you're gonna get. It's not gonna see this talked about a ton.
We can blame the phenomenon on the moon. It is a lunar high tide. It's called a spring tide because of the force. The moon apparently is closer to the Earth and causing the gravity of the water to come up. So it's a higher tide than we normally experience. There are projects that are addressing our drainage of our city. We are actually probably one of the first cities that looking even at sea level rising to take into account in many of our stormwater systems as we engineer those into the future.
Sea level rising. SE guy, thanks for the 13 months. Appreciate it. She said the forbidden thing. She said the forbidden thing. Oops.
Developing countries are going to be the first hit by climate change. What, are we going to build these for them? They can't particularly afford to build these preventative measures themselves. You talk about places like Seattle or other cities in the US as if that's the only part of the world that matters. But what happens to developing countries that can't afford to protect themselves? Climate change is going to result in a lot of damages, from heat strokes to more natural disasters to greater disease spreading to loss of agriculture. How exactly do we build something for everything, for everyone in every part of the world? That seems to be a lot more ambitious than just simply reducing carbon emissions and transitioning to renewable energy.
Geoengineering, which is a methodology that's being explored largely in some of the northern European countries for actually changing the climate itself by, for example, shooting particular types of material into the air. These sorts of solutions are things we should be pursuing.
We are already using aerosols to slow down climate change, but that's only a temporary solution. It's not even the best temporary solution out there. We cannot rely on something like that to fix our climate because it comes with other consequences. If you want to stop a bathtub from filling up, the temporary solution of turning the faucet down is only temporary. Aerosols will only buy us time. It's not the solution itself.
They're a lot
He's
easier.
literally calling for geoengineering. He'd rather spew fucking chemicals into the air intentionally than use technology that's already cheaper than fossil fuels. That's just
to do because technology is a lot easier to do than anything remotely approaching a global carbon tax, which will, number one, be unsuccessful, and two, will not mitigate.
First of all, I'm not even saying we should have a carbon tax. You know what I'm saying, chat? We have command and control of the economy, and we take guns and we put them to the heads of Rex Tillerson and every CEO of a fossil fuel company, and we nationalize them, and then we use the resources that we have to develop intentionally a replacement for our energy grid that's green. Tax? That sounds like neoliberal babble to me.
The effects on the climate nearly as much as you're talking about.
Yes, we do have a lot of technological advancements, and these are getting cheaper and cheaper as we speak. But technology itself will never be the answer. We need to use it in combination with other measures in order to solve this global issue of climate change. From reducing CO2 emissions to investing more in renewable energy, which, by the way, is part of technology, I guess. But Ben thinks that these will just magically happen without intervention. But as we've seen again and again, it doesn't seem like many people, especially large corporations and political figures, have much interest in this. That's not to say we're not developing technologies, but that we can and should be doing a lot more. The more we invest now to prevent climate change, the less we will have to pay later. Anyway, that's the end of the video. I likely will be taking a break next week, so there won't be a video, but I will be back the week after.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Do fossil fuel companies basically pay for Ben Shapiro's media company? I mean, they're one of many right wing. I mean, it's hedge funds and fossil fuels are typically the biggest supporters of this type of stuff. Alrighty, chat. Oh shit, oh fuck. Oh shit, oh fuck. Okay, chat, I want to play a game. Let us play a game together. It's called Can You Reach Net Zero by 2050? By the Financial Times. That's the game, okay? That's the game. Can you reach net zero by 2050? Let's fucking go. Gamer Mike is back. All right, let's start this. You need to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees C by cutting energy-related carbon dioxide emissions to net zero by 2050. In 2021, they reached a record 36 billion tons a year. You must also deal with other greenhouse gases and protect people and nature for the planet to remain habitable. All right, let's fucking go. Welcome to the game. After a wave of extreme weather, world leaders... Why is this text so small? Let me zoom in. When it gets serious about climate change, they appoint you the global minister for future generations to make decisions squabbling. Have dodged for decades. Global temperatures have already risen by 1.2 degrees C compared with the pre-industrial average. You have 3 rounds covering the years 2022 to 2050 to use your sweeping global powers to cut emissions to zero and keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees C. But you will not be alone in your quest. Choose your advisor. Oh, this will be easy. We've got Gina Green, teen activist sparking behavioral change. Waldo Watts, entrepreneur developing new technologies. Catalina Congress, politician driving policy change. Or David Deals, businessman influencing global leaders. So who should we pick? I mean, obviously we got to go with Catalina, right? Waldo Watts. I mean, like, I think having new technologies would be sweet, but the bigger issue is the policy change. So for me, I'm going with Catalina Congress. All right. Good afternoon, Minister. Let's cut emissions ASAP. You have a budget of 100 effort points to spend on saving the planet and adapting to a hotter world. Answers will cost more as you progress through the game, but smart investments will earn you points back. Run out entirely and the game will end. As you play, the planet will change in response to your actions. Be careful. Okay, chat. Round 1. Let's do it. Coal makes up 3/4 of the CO2 produced by electricity. Will you stop all new coal plants globally and close those in wealthy countries, phase out coal plants in wealthy countries, or let market takes its course and coal demand will fall? We're going to effort point stop. Next question. Cutting emissions in all areas needs new technologies. Each innovation costs 5 points. It will double your investment if your choices take off. Select one or more of the following. These are terrible. These are all bad. I mean, we want better electric... Oh, boy. These are all fucking garbage. These are garbage. Green hydro, better batteries, sustainable fuel for planes, and reforestation. Okay, these are the what? These are good. This is so small, but we have to do it. These don't. These are fucking stupid. All right, we're doing this. I don't think that reforestation was a good. All right, next question. Transport is the fastest growing CO2 emissions problem, and car sales are going up. What is your policy? It's definitely ban global sales of traditional cars and invest. We're going big, baby. You have won an award. Jobs. Transforming the road transport sector has led to millions of new jobs. Wow. What do you know about that? What do you know? Hey, buildings and construction make up over 1/3 of energy use. Cities are growing fast in developing countries. What will you do? Mandate that cities must knock down all poorly insulated homes and replace them with highly efficient equivalents. Okay. I would do this. These are all good. I would do all of this. Can you do all, or you can only do one? I can only do one. Well, we're knocking down poorly insulated. West Antarctic ice sheet disintegration. Well done for your hard work so far. Unfortunately, the carbon dioxide is already in the atmosphere, changing the Earth dramatically. Tipping points are looming. These are critical climate thresholds that, once passed, can lead to irreversible changes to our planetary systems. The more you cut emissions, the fewer tipping points you'll have to face. In Antarctica, a giant iceberg almost the size of Greater London has broken off, a sign that West Antarctic ice sheet may be becoming more unstable. Let's find out what else happened. Hey, the ice sheet remains stable. The sea level is still rising, but the worst has been averted, at least for now. Okay. Okay. Next question. All right. Whether cement, steel, or glass, manufacturing causes a lot of pollution. Industry alone makes up about 1/4 of energy-related CO2 emissions. What do you want to do first? Ban all disposable cotton? Get the fuck out of here. Give financial breaks to people who recycle their small... What the fuck? Of course it's this. Okay, we're high effort Andy, okay? Hi, Global Minister. I've got good news. I just held a summit of national leaders, and they unanimously support my plan to factor the economic value of natural assets, such as rainforests, into the cost of business. 10 more points, baby. All right. Your goal is to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees C, and that means dealing with greenhouse gases other than CO2. Global methane emissions account for about 1/3 of human-caused warming. Do you want to deal with methane now? Cutting CO2 is the #1 priority. Deal with methane later, or focus on methane. The problem is urgent. Dude, we can't ignore methane. This is crazy. Good choice. Slashing methane emissions is the quickest way to slow global warming because it traps far more heat than CO2. It doesn't last as long in the atmosphere. Stopping gas leaks, covering landfills, flooding old coal mines, and less beef and dairy in diets will significantly cut methane emissions. A huge step towards net zero. 10 more points, baby. We're getting refunds, baby. We're getting refunds. The more we do, the better it is. I should have just invested in everything, because why not? Your decision to invest in improving batteries is paying off. Electric vehicles are getting cheaper, and drivers no longer have to worry about their range. Collect 10 points. We're making money left and right. We're comboing. Agriculture and the loss of trees is the largest cause of greenhouse gas emissions after energy. How will you tackle those and improve nature's ability to absorb CO2? I'm obviously going to reduce deforestation by 2/3 and plant hundreds of millions of hectares of native forest. Like, come on, man. Like, what? Of course. Carbon sinks. You got to do that. And then boom. Okay. Well done for taking bold action. Land use contributes 1/4 of human-caused greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, what people don't know, and this is an important fact, this is something that triggers people, but I don't know why. It's just true. Brazil and Indonesia have the largest rainforest in the world. Their deforestation of forests for palm farming in Indonesia and cattle farming in the Amazon in Brazil are one of the leading causes of global warming in the planet, and they have to be stopped. You have to stop using palm oil all the time, and we need to stop allowing deforestation for like cattle in Brazil, which is actually a relatively small economic driver. It's fucking crazy. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. Mike, do you know the podcast Poor Proles Almanac? I don't know that one, I don't think, but they sound cool. Planting hundreds of millions of trees has improved the health of the world's forests. We got another award! Nature, baby! All right, right now we've done a good job. You must do more to cut energy-related emissions. Select a sector for more detail on why. Okay, so we did cut. We spent 80, we have 70 remaining. You're doing well, but not quite on track for net zero. There's no time to waste. Okay. Methane, land use, and green future. Okay, we did it. So electricity is where we really need to cut back. We attacked buildings and transport, but we didn't do the CO2 carbon capture for factories. I thought that was fucking stupid. All right, let's go. Round 2, baby. Polling shows some voters think you're moving too fast and they're worried about electricity bills will soar. How will you get them on side? Ask Twitter to promote hashtag Save Our Planet. Ignore them, they're wrong. Okay, chat. Obviously, you got to do propaganda. This is very important. We got to do propaganda. Like, what are you doing? Of course we're doing propaganda. Your campaign is working. People are excited about potential jobs. We get the points right back. You've decided how you want to deal with coal. What will you do about electricity? Invest $2 trillion a year in renewable energy. Invest $4 trillion a year. Or gradually expand renewable energy and invest in energy storage. Bro, are you fucking kidding me? This is the Green New Deal. Let's fucking go. Are you shitting me? This is growth, baby. Investing in clean energy has made it easier for developing nations to decarbonize. Look at this. We got equality, too. We're winning. We've got jobs, nature, and equality so far. I mean, like, come on, man. We're killing it. Despite your efforts so far, carbon has already in the atmosphere is causing the world to get hotter. How many points would you like to spend on adaptation to help improve people's lives, protect them from heat waves, floods? Well, I mean, like, is there any question? Bazinga, build infrastructure. Let's go ahead and see that growth award happen. No? Oh, shit. Transport is not only about cars. What will you do to address emissions? I mean, mandate low carbon fuel for aviation, cap the number of long haul flights, increase the frequent flyer tax, develop a fuel-powered hydrosonic plane that could travel from London to the city in 4 hours to cut commercial flight times, or gradually introduce low-carbon fuel for innovation. Hypersonic plane. I think you have to do this. That might hurt growth. Probably the middle one. Hypersonic planes aren't viable. Yeah, well, that's not a hypersonic. Those are supersonic. It's either... I will do the mandate. That's going to hurt. That's going to hurt our growth, though. I bring good news. Your bet on green hydrogen is paying off. The price of machines that make hydrogen, called electrolyzers, is falling. Making hydrogen from water and clean power is set to be one of the cheapest sources of energy in the world. You just keep winning, folks. Marine heat waves are threatening the world's coral reefs. The next one forecast to hit the Caribbean could bleach the coral beyond repair. Let's check the temperature. Disaster strikes. The marine heat wave is intense, and the corals are now gone forever. Fish stocks collapse, depriving residents of food and work. You must send aid to limit the unrest. Damn. We lost the coral reefs, chat. Damn. How will you tackle emissions from buildings? Paint all building rooftops white to deflect the sun? Rule that new buildings must be zero carbon, for example, with good insulation, but only in rich countries. No. What? No, we have to deal with both old and new buildings, retrofit 20% of the old ones, and declare all new buildings must be zero carbon. It's not even that hard. This is actually a lot easier than people think. Economic incentives that can also help cut carbon emissions. Polluters in Europe are paying $100 for every ton that is released. Do you want to set a global carbon price? Yes, set a carbon price of $100 per ton. This will add $230 per liter to petrol. If I do this, I will get crucified. There's no fucking way you can do that. If you pick that, you get crucified. It'll be like everyone comes for your head. You got to do this. You got to do this. Sorry, chat. I'm pussing out. I wouldn't do this. I can't lie to you, chat. Excellent work. The carbon price is prompting businesses and investors to back the new infrastructure needed for clean energy. Global acceptance of the price has also helped avoid a carbon border trade war. Pushing through a carbon price has shifted businesses toward responsible growth. That's an oh, look at that. Look at that. I got 4 out of the 5 awards on our first. This is I mean, we're just dominating. Okay. Improving recycling was important for cutting industrial emissions. What's next? Commission a research process into innovative low carbon steel, make set and aluminum production more efficient, or invest $200 billion annually into reducing industry emissions such as through carbon capture and storage and making steel using hydrogen. I really hate carbon capture, but we'll do this. I think carbon capture is stupid. Your decision to invest in the aviation industry is starting to pay off, and more planes are using fuels made from waste oils and algae. And unfortunately, your bet to plant trees by using drones to sow seeds did not have much of impact as you hoped. While the plant was useful for planting in rugged ground, a low seed survival rate meant it did not help reforest at the rates needed. Damn, the stupid drones. Of course the drones didn't work. What were we thinking, chat? Okay. Energy-related emissions are falling, but you need to slash them faster. Select the sector for more detail on why. Okay, what's going on in industry? You're not quite on track for net zero. Redouble your efforts in the final round. Okay. Shit. We're doing good on electricity. Buildings are hard to move. Transport, we tried to move. Industry. Okay. Round 3, baby. Let's do it. Reports suggest previous decisions by the global minister for future generations are going to have a significant impact on how much it will cost to tackle climate change over the next 20 years. Good luck. All right. Electricity must be at the core of the new energy system. How do you want it to be generated? We have to go with this. We have to go with 88% renewable. We can't have 20% fossil fuels. That's just too much. We got to do the big effort. Our report is from Carbon Valley, where residents have been calling for cleaner air, shadier public spaces, and green travel options. We're starting to see the benefits of the global ministers for future generations' decision to invest in adapting to climate change. Focusing on sustainable city design means more trees for shade and less use of private cars. Air pollution is falling and people are happier and healthier. 15 points back. I mean, chat, we've made what, one mistake? All right, climate tipping point. This is a big one. Much of the Amazon is on the brink of changing from rainforest to dry savanna after years of deforestation. Any logging could make it irreversible. Let's see what happens next. Let's fucking go. Bolsonaro won. Bolsonaro won the election. God damn it. All right. Population and economic growth mean that road transport is on the rise. How will we deal with it from 2030 to 2050? Push for electric vehicles to make almost half of cars. That's too small. Build tunnels under cities? We have to go big, baby. I'm sorry, chat. We got to go big. We're getting low on points. But we got to go big. You won an award. Putting more electric vehicles on the roads has cut pollution and made people happier and healthier. We have all 5 trophies. Like how? I mean, like, look at this, man. A big heat wave is about to strike the mega city of Dystopia. Population 20 million. More than 1 million people are vulnerable and could die from prolonged exposure. The region has already been severely affected by heat and drought over the past decade, and this could spark civil unrest. Motherfucker, I built all the new buildings. Looks like forward planning by the global minister for future generations means the city is adapting to this extreme weather. Heat shelters are everywhere. Buildings such as schools and clinics have been repurposed to give refuge to the most vulnerable. Give it back. Policy changes and new technologies won't be enough. Human behavior will have to adapt to how will you reduce emissions from the food that people eat? Announce that all protein in diets must now come from insects. Invest in research to improve crop production, or promote plant-based foods to reduce meat and dairy in diets. I mean, obviously, that's the most effective thing you can do. Good move. Reducing meat and dairy in diets was the right decision. Livestock requires vast amounts of land for feed crops and are inefficient at turning these into calories for humans. Look at that. Building emissions have fallen, but not by enough. How will you get them to zero by 2050? Fully retrofit 85% of... I'm sorry, chat. We're going down to the... We're doing it. We're going big. We have 5 points left. Do I lose? Do I absolute lose if I have no points? We have to invest. Your research into new and recycled materials was the right choice. Was a shortage is subsiding. Oh, fuck. We don't have the points. Oh, fuck. We're losing on the last question. We ran out of points at the last minute. We ran out of points at the last minute. The 40-point decision was a lot. We had to do it to win. We had to do it to win. We ran out of points. We ran out of points. We had to do that bet. We had to do that bet. Oh, man. We should have invested in drones. We would have been able to make it to the end if we didn't invest in drones. That was our mistake. We invested in drones like a fucking idiot. Let's speed run this, chat. Let's speed run it. Okay, now that we know that drones are stupid, let's speed run. Also, we were unlucky. We were unlucky. All right, we're going to speed run. All right. We're speed running. I kind of like this one. Ban coal and oiler boil sales and roll out heat pumps. Cap thermostats at 20 degrees C in winter. Knock down all poorly insulated homes. It's a lot of points, man. Heat pumps are really good. All right, we're going to do the poorly. We're going to do the big ones. We got unlucky. All right, we're speed running. All right, let's go. We're speed running. We're speed running. We're speed running. We're speed running. Green hydrogen and the carbon capture is yielding results. Oh shit. Fuck, we lost the roll again. Our aviation industry is paying off. Okay, we're not quite on track. We're on to round 3. This is the last one. All right, we got to do the electricity. We have to do the high effort electricity. We need to win one of these rolls. Fuck me. Shit. Fuck. We don't have enough points unless we get a bonus. This is the last question. We have to do this because we don't have enough for the other ones. Well, we made it to 2050. Did we do it? You made wise decisions and navigated a difficult path to avoid the worst effects of climate change. From new jobs to cleaner air, the world is enjoying the benefits of your drive to cut emissions. What's the temperature? We did 1.47. We fucking did it. We fucking did it. Your planet is on course for 1.47 degrees of warming by 2100 compared with the pre-industrial average. Although the temperature rose above 1.5 degrees C temporarily during the middle of the century, it will then decline. You have successfully achieved the most ambitious target of the Paris Climate Accord and saved the Earth from the worst effects of climate change. Nevertheless, heat waves and droughts are more common than previously, so adaptation will still be important. Well done. We're the winners, baby. We're the winners, baby. Those are my decisions. Net, well done. Despite not cutting quite emissions to zero, you successfully achieved the most ambitious target of the Paris Climate Accord and kept the temperature below 1.5 degrees C with 0 points remaining. 0 points remaining. Now do a Republican playthrough. By the way, you had to deal with the West Antarctic ice sheet, coral reefs, and the Amazon rainforest. This cost you 50 points. Yeah, these motherfucking tipping points screwed me. I had like the hardest possible outcome. Play as a Republican, we would die instantly. We'll do one Republican. Okay, so we've done it. We successfully won. Let's play again as Donald Trump. Speedrun Donald Trump. All right, let's go. My advisor is going to be David Deals. All right, let's fucking go. All right. Let the market take its course. Let the market take its course, chat. All right, what do we want to invest in? All right, obviously a Republican would get carbon capture. Roads made of solar panels. I mean, because that's a grift. Doesn't work. Green hydrogen. We would do that. We would do reforestation using drones. And why not electric vehicles? Actually, I wonder, would they invest in anything? What do you think, chat? Should we invest? What should we invest in? What kind of Republican? I think they would definitely do this and maybe this. Literally nothing? I don't know. Carbon capture and drones? All right. Let's just do carbon capture. That's it. Okay. Obviously, we would invest in self-drive carpooling. This is the most chud. This is the Elon Musk bro one. Okay, let's do that one. We would definitely just do, I mean, we wouldn't even do this, but we have to pick one. So we're doing this one. All right. Damn. All right. Give financial breaks to people who recycle their old electronics. Okay, a tax cut? I'm behind a tax cut. We're definitely for a tax cut. I've got good news. I reached out to the 10 biggest financiers of fossil fuels who agreed to end all support for new coal, oil, and gas production immediately. Okay, cool. Obviously, we'll deal with methane later. It's a bridge fuel. That's the way we want to go. Bad move. Well, fuck you. I don't want to hurt the economy. Support companies buying voluntary carbon offsets. Or okay, obviously you want emissions to fall naturally. The market has got to decide. We don't want to interfere. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, shit. Emissions went up. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. All right. Some voters think I'm moving too fast. Obviously, Hashtag save our planet. Hashtag make America great again. The focus on Twitter was too narrow. Lose 10 points. Oh, shit. Twitter's not real life, according to this game. How do you want to deal with coal? I mean, obviously, we want to gradually expand renewable energy. Like, come on. Despite your efforts so far, carbon already in the atmosphere is causing the world to get hotter. How many points would you like to spend on adaptation? We'll do a bipartisan infrastructure deal. Infrastructure week. Okay. I'm not going to have it just be 0-0. I want us to invest in some shit. This is like my Donald Trump playthrough. Obviously, we're going to Oh, no. We want a fuel-powered hypersonic plane. Let's fucking go. Did we talk about Puerto Rico yet? No. Research that you funded carbon capture is yielding results. Oh, hell yeah. Coral reefs are dying. Damn. Hate to see it. I want to paint all building rooftops white. Deflect the sun. Lower the planet's albedo. You get less energy. Economic incentives can also help cut carbon emissions. No, carbon pricing has not worked well anyway. Keep our points, baby. Oh, we're losing points. Oh, shit. All right. We want to have a research project, obviously. Arctic heating. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. You're not doing anywhere near enough to cut energy-related emissions. Select the sector for more detail on why. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. All right. Round 3. Let's go. I don't know about you, chat. Look how many renewables. We're at 60% renewables. Look at that. Fucking doing it. All right. Carbon Valley. Oh, shit. Yeah. We adapted. Oh, fuck. Amazon forest. Lula won. Lula won. God damn it. All right. Let's keep going. Obviously, we want to build tunnels under cities because that's the best way to reduce traffic jams. A local heat wave is about to strike. Okay. Oh, shit. We got points back. We want to make more crop production, clearly. Ah, shit. Building emissions have fallen, but not by enough. How will you get them to 0 by 2050? I want to incentivize people. I want to cut their taxes so they invest in their own gardens. That's an individualist. If we all individually plant some trees in our own suburban homes, that'll do it. Cut taxes on people with gardens. All right. Let the market take care of itself with critical minerals. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. I'm getting fired. God damn it. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Damn. Damn. It looks like we didn't succeed as a Republican. All right. I thought for a second Lula actually did win and felt a small amount of optimism for the future. Sadly, I realized the joke and the future is dark. Nah, Lula's going to win. Lula's going to win. All right. Well, that was the game. When I did Mike from PA strats, we won. Even though we had bad rolls on everything, we won. How about a corporate dem run? I kind of did that. We lost all our